This is Rob Beach from Beach's Motorcycle Adventures, and right now we are still, believe it or not, sitting here in Western New York. We just had a beautiful sunset over the Niagara River, and that's not all bad. What is bad is, as Americans, we still can't go to Europe. So we're sitting here having a grand old time at home and passing the time with Beach's Audio Adventures. And right now I'm going to see how things are going in the Great White North. Mike Knott, what's happening with your world?
Not too much, Rob. I'm fairly knees deep or higher yet maybe into building a house right now, so not a lot of time for motorcycling. This is actually a not too bad year for me not to be able to go to Europe because we probably couldn't go either way. But I'm sitting here enjoying a Whitley Neal Blood Orange Gin with, it's my favorite, Fever Tree tonic. And I picked this because it's almost like a little bit exotic. It's really quite nice. You can almost drink this right on ice, just the gin, which is unusual for any gin. But this is a little bit exotic. I thought it kind of matched our subject for tonight. We're going to be talking about riding in Corsica and Sardinia, a little bit more of exotic area, I would suggest. And we're going to be talking about this with Ken Condon. Welcome aboard, Ken. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, it's good to be back. Rob asked if I wanted to come and sort of chit-chat about this. I have not been on this particular tour yet, but that's the plan for next May. And so I wanted to sort of interject a little bit about what my role is and also just sort of listen in on see what the future holds.
Yeah, exactly. So my mission today is to sell you on it. Mike's mission today is to back me up because he's been there a few times. And your mission today is to get great enthusiasm and say, ooh, 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 yeah.
I'm already doing that. I read the webpage today on it, and Carolyn and I are pretty excited about it for sure.
It certainly is one of my favorite places to go, although I don't know if I have. Well, they're all great places. It's hard to narrow it down, but it's definitely one of Bonnie's favorite places to go. She's been there several times. I've been there 4 or 5, 3 or 4 tours anyways. And beautiful scenery and amazing roads, great food. It's got it all.
I hope there are no corners though, because those are scary.
Oh, Ken, no, actually, we've got a route for you. We've got a route for you, and you're going to love it. It's going to be 2 weeks of you practicing drag racing.
Is that right? Yay. Excellent.
Hope you brought your dress.
Yeah.
Oh, me, oh, my. Yes. So, no, actually, it's interesting because I was looking through the photos of the last couple of tours. We've been going to Corsica for years and years. The first time I was in Corsica was in the 80s, for sure. So we've been going there for quite a while. And it's only about 4 or 5 years ago that we incorporated Sardinia into the trip. And as I'm looking through the photographs of Sardinia, I'm not impressed. And it was really interesting because for the first 3 days that we're in Sardinia, and from having seen many of Gretchen's photos, that she's got an eye to be able to pick things out and really find interesting subjects on the side of the road as we're thundering by or putting by, as the case may be. And the images that come back from Sardinia were mediocre. And yet I remember so fondly all of the riding on those same 3 days that I came to realize that what is really, really special about that particular part of the tour is indeed the things that you mentioned earlier, those curves. And boy, are there piles of them. The Sardinia is a favorite for the Germans. They really like to go and play in Sardinia versus Corsica because it's Italian. So they like that. It's different than the Germanic side. The French of Corsica and the Germans don't get along so well, I think. So that may have something to do with it, old history. Our endeavor to check out Sardinia was pushed by German friends of mine who said, oh, you must go, you must go, you must go. So we went and we discovered a place that seems to be built for sport motorcyclists. The roads are fantastic. The corners are really seriously numerous. The pavement is excellent in quality and in grip, and there's no traffic. And the one thing that I kept thinking about as I was looking through all the photos, and mind you, the archives that we have aren't what we're putting up publicly necessarily. We've got thousands of photos from each tour. So I'm looking through all of these, the castaways and the ones that we kept and the best of, etc., and realizing that there aren't cars anywhere in any of them because the traffic up in the mountains is gone. So it's very similar to riding places in Southern California. The brush and the vegetation is similar. It's low, it's scrub. The roads are twisting through mountains that are very similar to those in Southern California. When we're there, it's definitely greener than Southern California, but there's no people at all. And so the thing that fascinated me today was the not being able to come up with photos to show people and say, look at how great this is, and yet having such a really positive memory of those same days of which there aren't any photos, and it's all simply because of the riding. Wouldn't you say that's true, Mike?
Yeah, for sure, Rob. Yeah, the roads, just amazing. Great quality of pavement in Sardinia. And yeah, in the middle of nowhere. I've commented about this before, Bonnie and I, being on a back road somewhere. We're on it for 40 minutes. This road, a car and a half wide, maybe 2 cars wide, just winding, meandering in amongst the cork trees. And I finally realized that this was an access road just for the farmers to access the cork fields that would go on. They're quite extensive. And you're thinking, like, in most places, this would be a dirt road because that seems to be the only reason for this road. We kind of stumbled upon it, but just a really great little fun road, up, down, around, kind of neat scenery and amazing pavement again. And like a lot of Europe, where you're not so concerned about dirt on the corners that I seem to see in North America all the time, because people cut the corners and kick the dirt on the roads. Even on those smaller roads, the European drivers are very good. They don't do that. But what I also liked about it is instead of your typical alpine roads, where generally speaking are more hairpin type passes, things like that, they don't tend to do hairpins there. It'll be a road that meanders down the side of a mountain, because I would guess because they're not dealing with the same type of grade changes, so they have more ability to do that. But corner and corner and corner and corner and corner. If you could get sick of corners, that would be the place, I think. It's quite amazing. And just that great pavement. And like Rob said, no traffic. Sardinia, I passed a couple police officers who were out there because, of course, like a lot of Europe, the speed limit on the road is 80 kilometers an hour, I believe, in Italy. And to try and do 80 kilometers an hour, good luck with that. So I passed a police officer who's probably just out for a drive, nothing to do. He doesn't care. You go by and you're... just amazing pavement. I almost wonder, Rob, what do you think of even the Corsican part of this, right? Because it's France, but it's not quite France. It's relaxed France. So it's like island France. You know, when you go to the islands, it's island time, a little more relaxed. So I was thinking about that the day, like maybe that's the thing with Corsica, why it's a little bit more cool. It's a little more chill. If you can get the French to relax, that's it. That's maybe as relaxed as they get with, you know, kind of the language and their culture. You know, they're a little bit more low key about some of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm curious. What's Corsica like then? You know, Sardinia sounds amazing. How, you know,
it's a shitty place.
Oh, well, rather than jumping right into Corsica, let's run through Sardinia a little bit because it does kind of unfold in interesting ways. We've got a double overnight in Olina, which is right after we get off the ferry. We boogie down and stay in the same place for 2 nights, which gives us a great opportunity to get used to the bikes, get used to some excellent riding. Again, there's not much around there as far as larger cities, as far as cultural attractions. We're there for the ride for the first couple of days. It is simply brilliant. And it's a great place for people to get acclimated to their motorcycles and to get acclimated to riding in Europe. Again, with no traffic, with roads that are quasi-familiar, because as Mike mentioned, it's not up and down great steep climbs and descents. It's more riding through some really excellent mountains with turns and turns and more turns. So those 2 days, Ken, you're going to be busy talking to a whole bunch of folk on tour and explaining just how to make that all work.
Yeah.
You know what's going to be tough for him is getting through what the person did right or wrong the last turn before the 3/4 of the way through the next turn. It's like, okay, that 3 turns ago. Okay, no, this next one coming up. Here's what you need to do.
But the other neat thing about riding there is that the sight lines are pretty good. We've got a tour member who's been on many, many different tours with us, and he was on the Italian tour, and he got all finished with it. And he said, I love the culture, I love the food, I love the people, I love the cities and the architecture. But he said the riding isn't interesting to me because we spend too much time in the woods, and I like the great big views, the big vistas, and there's a lot of that in Sardinia because the scrub is low. It's not in your way, and once we get up into the hills, we've got views in all directions, which is really, really nice because we get that along with a very different type of road than we find in the Alps. And then from there, we scoot down along the coast to Cagliari. And Cagliari is one of the biggest cities on Sardinia, sitting down on the southern shore. That's our night with more people around and a little more culture. When we scoot out to the west coast of Sardinia, we are going up through some mining areas. Most of the mines are now closed, but at one point in the late 19th century, it was a very, very wealthy area with some significant mines. The roads through there are, again, great, and there's no traffic. You kind of wonder where everybody is, and they're in Cagliari.
Yeah, it's a pretty bustling city, which is nice because some people like that. They like going to a bigger city, so you have a little bit of mix in there. It's a neat city, lots of things. It's the kind of place you can get to earlier and wander around and just check things out for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think the contrast of beautiful roads all day. I mean, you can get sick of even the most beautiful roads all day, every day, and without any sort of respite of, or I should say, contrast. So that I'm attracted to that idea of being able to come and see some culture, that tends to be more in an urban or more populated area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need highs to appreciate lows, or lows to appreciate highs, depending on how you're looking at it. Right?
Yep. So Cagliari brings that to the table. And then we're back off into nothing, literally, on the southwest corner of the island, scooting up to Bosa. And Bosa is a lovely little town on a river, freshwater river that flows into the ocean. And the town sits right at the mouth of the river. It's a really, really attractive town with a castle up on the mountain behind. It really is a gorgeous little place.
And that's another neat place. It's got a nice little downtown area. Bonnie and I have done that the odd time. Maybe after supper, you don't feel like going to bed just yet. You can wander down, and there's all kinds of open bar and restaurant areas. You can sit and have a glass of wine or maybe some ice cream or whatever. It's just neat to hang out in these cities sometimes, kind of just watch people.
No doubt. Well, from what it sounds like, having ridden a little bit in Southern California and getting a picture in my mind of the type of terrain, that the training opportunities there, because you mentioned it earlier, ends up being a little bit less about, like you say, managing the road for needing to read the road accurately. And that's one thing we worked on a lot in Italy when I was working with students, is that we really needed to get an idea of what was around the corner that they couldn't see. And so that's something that I look forward to when we get a more open sight line. There's different things that we work on, and it's a lot about timing, and so that you're pointed correctly to the next corner because it's going to come up quick. What it sounds like, right?
And this is neat that way. And I love when you can link a couple of corners together, when you can drift out a little bit wider and then come back in to make almost like a double apex turn. And that's what you can get of some of the roads here. And then when we get to Corsica, we'll talk about later, it's a lot more about what you're talking about, Ken, and about what you were teaching about sight lines and setting things up. So it's a really good mix. So still in Sardinia, you can line up, or you should have your mind. You can see 2 or 3 turns in a row kind of thing.
That's great. I love that sort of sweeping rhythm that you can get into, with roads like that. That's a nice, and again, another nice contrast.
Yep. And I have found few places that are better overall than Sardinia for that kind of riding. It really is super. And then we're up near the Emerald Coast on our last night in Sardinia. And a great ride from there up to the northern end of the island, where we hop on a ferry that takes an hour and a half, I guess, to cross some 10 miles to Bonifacio in Corsica. And there we have gone 10 miles due north to another country, another island, and truly and honestly an entirely different world.
Triple the price for a bottle of wine. I mean, not triple, double.
No, not triple. Come on, it's not that bad. It's not
a lot when you're in Sardinia. Is that what you're saying?
Well, Corsica is wild. Corsica is unruly. Corsica is tight, twisty, much higher. To run this tour in the opposite direction and go from Corsica to Sardinia would be a huge letdown because of the way things unfold. It's a bit like going to New Zealand. If you go to New Zealand and start on the North Island, it's brilliant. It's great. It's really, really a tremendous place, and you could enjoy 2 or 3 weeks just on the North Island. Once you drop down to the South Island and see the scenery that's there, the North Island is anticlimactic, so doing it in the opposite direction doesn't work well. It's the same with this, because Corsica is much higher. The mountains are much higher. The coastline is a little more rugged. The roads are a little narrower, a little twistier. In some places, they're much narrower, even though they have a center line painted down them. Imagine a road that is van width wide with the edge of the tires on the Sprinter van actually on the very edge of the pavement on both sides, and they've taken the time to put a center line down the middle of it. And that's certainly not true of all the roads, but there are many roads that are like that. And Corsica is really and truly alpine mountainous in places. It's really fascinating, and a lot of woods, a lot of dense woods. It's still very rural. And the biggest city is Ajaccio, which we don't stay in, but we go through on the west coast. But we've got a double overnight in Olmeto as soon as we get onto the island, because there's some great riding there, scooting over to the east coast or playing up in the mountains to the northeast. And then we run up the west coast to Ajaccio and inland to Corte, which is in the middle of the island, and up high in the mountains, and some just stunning views and great riding up there. And then
we're jumping ahead a little bit here. Olmeto, isn't that the place with the great outdoor pizza oven right on the coast?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it.
Yes. Let's slow down here, man.
Oh, you want to go back there and just put your feet up for a day? Yes, we do have a double overnight there, so you've got the possibility to take very short days if you're inclined. Enjoy some great swimming. We're right on the ocean there. Bonnie, Mike, Gretchen, and I were having a picnic down there. You were there, I think, for this, Mike. And we were having a picnic down on the shore. And all of a sudden, Gretchen starts screaming. She's sitting on a rock about 20 feet away from us, and she starts screaming. What? Octopus! An octopus! There's an octopus! And she was sitting on a rock, and a wave came in, very small wave, and flopped up onto the rock next to her, and along with that was an octopus that just went gablook on the rock, and right next to her. We're talking about 6 inches away, and hung out for a minute or two, and then slid back down into the water. But it was quite clear that it was going up for a ride to see what was going on.
Yes, what's going on up on that rock? That's my rock. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. And then so we fed it some of our pizza, and it would reach out with its tentacles across the bottom and grab the pizza and eat it. Yeah. And apparently quite enjoyed it because it came for another piece. Yes, lovely place for a double overnight, because you've got quite a few options there. And Olmeto is
for some people who often spouses don't want to ride maybe that in between day. They want a relaxed day, and a bunch of the hotels on this tour, especially, they have great spots like that. So you're right on the ocean, and so great. Of course, if weather will cooperate, but that's always a factor. But yeah, you can do a beach day, just hang out, relax, walk around. I love that spot. So
the temperature and what would we expect in May?
70s, and during the day. Maybe a light jacket in the evening. This is assuming the weather stays decent and reasonable.
Right.
But when we're down at sea level along the different parts of the route, in Bosa, in Olmeto, up in St. Florent, we are at sea level and the temperatures are quite nice. So at the most, when the sun's down, you would be in a light jacket sitting by the shoreline. During the day, t-shirt temperatures, not mesh. You won't need a mesh jacket. I haven't needed anything that was that vented normally. But last year there were a couple of days when we were inland in Corsica that it was quite hot. It was up around 90 degrees.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit hard to say, but it's on the warmer side, which is why we're down there at that time, because we've got great weather and great possibilities for riding still while the Alps are snowed over.
Right. I was looking at the map on Google Maps actually, and I see the crazy corners that I'm seeing. The roads they're like endless. It's a spider web of curvy roads.
Yeah, yes, and they are really and truly wild little twisty roads. And that's one of the things that makes this particular tour so cool, is it's so different than Sardinia. The riding is so different. I think about adventure bikes when I think about Corsica. I think about sport bikes when I think about Sardinia as the ideal machine, because the Corsican roads at times can be a little rough. They definitely climb up to places up in the mountains that are so rural that the only people that are on those roads normally are motorcyclists and the people that live there. And that's the extent of it. And it's not at all uncommon to come around a corner and find 30 pigs in the middle of the road, which is, they're farmed pigs, but they're not restrained farmed pigs. And it's hard to tell which ones are wild and which ones are, quote, domestic. I think they're all wild. They just catch some of them and do the same thing that they do with domestic pigs.
Yeah, Corsica certainly seems more active with the wildlife, or not wildlife, but Corsica has pigs. Of course, there's lots of pigs around, but pigs aren't bad. They're fairly intelligent. They tend to run along the road. They don't tend to cross the road. Cows, there's cows. Cows are good. Cows stand there and look at you, like they don't move too quickly. But when you start getting to goats, which they have, those are the dangerous ones, because they can tend to dart wherever. You can't guess where they're going. They don't know where they're going. And the sheep tend to stay in their flock, which is a good thing about sheep.
Well, yeah, but the problem is that if the flock is spread on both sides of the road, the sheep on that side think that their flock is over there. And the sheep on that side of the road think their flock is over there. So sheep scare me.
Yeah, they can for sure. Is that where is it? At the De La Roya? I'm trying to think of the hotel. Is that in St. Florent, where it's at the base of a park?
No. That's the Hotel by Corte.
Oh, okay.
That's not the De La Roya.
Okay.
So the Hotel by Corte is in the Valle Restonica, which is a stunning natural valley running along the Restonica River. And the road actually goes up to a dead-end parking area, which is the beginning of a hiking trail across Corsica. And it's absolutely stunning. So our hotel is just a little bit up the valley there on the west side of Corte proper. And we strongly recommend that as people get in, they stop at the hotel and get some refreshments and shake off some of the road bit, and then hop back on the bike and take another 5-mile ride up the road to the end, because it is just stunning. Yeah,
there's a restaurant at the end. You can go up there, and there's a huge waterfall cascading down from the mountain. Last time we were there, Bonnie and I hiked up right to the base of the waterfall. It's a hike. I think it took us half hour of walking mostly up, but if you have the energy and you're in early enough, that's something to do.
Sounds like something to plan for. Carol and I are hikers, so that if we get off the bike, you're on the motorcycle all day, to get off and take like a half-hour hike. Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, especially, again, depending on weather, but it's a nice day. And just to do something different. I think Rob and Gretchen have been trying to do that, find places and hotels that offer a little bit of a mix of some different stuff. It's not just bike. There's certainly that if you want to, but there's some other options too for people who want to just do something a little different.
And one of the things that we haven't mentioned is that on both islands, the beaches are incredible. Particularly Sardinia's got some world-class beaches, and at the time of the year that we're there, there's nobody on them. Corsica has world-class beaches, but they don't tend to be very big. You have to look for them a little bit, and you may have to ride down a bit of a dirt road to get to the end of the dirt road and then walk from there for another quarter of a mile, and you're on a beach that's half a mile long with stunning mountains behind you and nobody else on the beach at all. At all. Really, really incredible possibilities for that. So to wrap up a little bit of midday activity and snoozing in the sun on a sandy beach is possible throughout the tour.
Well, and that's a good point about this tour. Also, I found that the mileage, the days, sometimes two different things, but can be shorter because we're in smaller islands. You're not going to generally do 400-kilometer days here, even if you wanted to. So you kind of have the opportunity, like you said, Rob, you're up in the mountains, you can ride down to the ocean and kind of enjoy a nap for half an hour or something, feel a little burnt out, and there's no problem. You have tons of time, where sometimes some of the other tours, you have time, but not a ton of it. You need to get to the next destination. This one's a little more relaxed that way. Again, more like island time, right? Island time.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Absolutely.
So Rob, you I'm sure you provide the GPS routes, and you've got lots of cool ones, I'm sure, like always.
Of course. And the stops that are there, in some places there are very few. So it's, hey, you really do want to stop and have lunch up here because there's not anything else for a while. But there are grocery stores in many of the little villages. They may not have a restaurant, but they'll have a grocery store or a vegetable stand with fruits, etc. So there's some place to get a picnic. And both Corsica and Sardinia are great, stunningly great places to pack a picnic on a daily basis, because the weather tends to be pretty consistent and pretty decent throughout the day. And to pull over on the side of the road in so many places, you're not dealing with traffic. You're not watching cars go by all day long. You can stop somewhere and have a picnic, and there will be 5 vehicles and 15 motorcycles going by, and that's the extent of it. So that's really, really neat. And then after we are in Corte, we scoot back down along the coastline and head up to St. Florent, where we have another double overnight. And that gives us the possibility to put your feet up a little bit again and enjoy the water, to head over to St. Florent and do some shopping and putter around there, to eat a couple bowls of fresh mussels, which is something that I do every single time I'm there. Head over to Calvi closer to the West Coast, which is a decent-sized town and a tourist attraction with a significant fort. So there are a lot of possibilities. Or to head up along the finger of Corsica, the index finger that's sitting due north, which is a stunning coastal ride that puts Highway 1 to shame.
Wow. Yeah, again, I'm looking at it on the map, and it just looks unbelievable how many twists are going on, going back and forth across from the two coasts too, from the east and the west. From St. Florent, we go to Bastia and get on a ferry and head back to the mainland. It is, if you ride directly, about 35 miles from St. Florent to Bastia. And you do indeed go over a wee bit of a mountain range, and it's a reasonably major road. I have another route that went down a little further to the south and crossed the mountains on secondary roads. If you were to rough draw those two on a map, you would end up with a square, and you're going from one corner of the square to the opposite corner of the square. And that really, it's scale-wise, that's about what it actually turns into. The fascinating thing is that the route to the south and through the mountains is 100% longer. 100% longer. How? Think seriously about any place that you have ever been on dirt or on the street where you could find a situation where this is the lay of the land
And if I go north and east, I'm going 50 miles. If I go south and east, I'm going 100 miles. I mean, where do you put an extra 50 miles of pavement? And they did. It's really, it's incredible, actually. And that particular route, I've never done the entire route as I've laid it out, and I've tried 5 times now. It's too tight, too twisty, too slow. It's great. It's a wonderful, wonderful ride. But we do indeed have a ferry to catch, and so we have to be at the ferry docks by 1 o'clock. And then from there, we're back to Italy, and our overnight is in Lucca, which is a beautiful walled city. Lucca is a very, very accommodating place. We've got a lovely hotel there in town. And because Florence is so close, if one wanted to putter about Lucca all day long, and it's a place that could easily absorb a day, you've got the possibility, because it's a 45-minute or hour ride to Florence from Lucca if you go direct. So there's a lot of time to play in either Lucca or Florence at the end of the tour, or great roads if you want to go for a ride.
And Pisa, you could always stop and check out Pisa.
You can stop and check out Pisa, yes.
You got some crooked tower thing there people like to look at.
It's not crooked, it leans a little bit. It leans one way or the other, depending on your point of view.
Is it leaning left or is it leaning right?
I'm not telling you. Have to check it out for yourself, Mike.
That this tour goes from the 16th to the 30th, so that gives us lots of time to explore.
It does, and it moves along at a very reasonable pace. As Mike pointed out, there's a lot of time on many days to do other things other than ride. The nice thing is that the good riding is spread throughout the tour. So it's not a situation where, hey guys, you really need to get, these 4 days of riding in because this is it. Not at all. You take it at your own pace, and you're always going to find good roads tomorrow and the day after, right up to the end of the tour. The thing that is surprising is how rural it is. I think that that's something that is important to explain. It's, we're not going to Rome, we're not going to Florence, we're out in the countryside, very definitely out in the countryside on both Sardinia and on Corsica. So the bigger cities that are there aren't big cities in comparison to Rome or in comparison to Florence.
St. Florent, a great place to go to, but yeah, you could walk through St. Florent. It's not that big.
Yeah, we walk to it because it's over across the bay, and then from there you can walk from one end to the other up to the fortification, back to the other end of town, and back to the hotel, and think, that was a nice walk. Gee, I've spent my entire day wandering around here. So it is on that level. It is a little different than some people may be perceiving Europe to be. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, you've got two very distinct cultures that are very unique. The Sardinians are Italians by being conquered, not by being born on the mainland and moving over there, and ditto with the Corsicans. So when we first went to Corsica in the 80s, the independence movement with the Corsicans was still very, very real. And they were setting off bombs occasionally and fighting the French. And they were specifically bombing French businesses. And I haven't seen any of that in the last decade anymore. So it doesn't mean that they've embraced the French as their countrymen yet. But they certainly are not quite as militant and active as they were 30 years ago.
Yeah, it seems like I know I've said a few times when you're in a restaurant or something and say, well, it's great here to be, I should be eating this because I'm in France, and I'll correct myself. Wait, sorry. No, I'm in Corsica. And a lot of times you get a smile from the waiter. That's right. This is in France. This is Corsica.
Yeah. Yep. Very, very true. But great seafood. It's magic. It's magic.
Well, I like this trip a lot, I think, because there's so much time spent on the coast and so much time around the oceans. But you still get some of the mountain villages that are kind of neat. It's really a nice balance that way. Big stuff, small stuff, big cities, small cities, mix of roads. I was thinking as you're talking about Corsica, Rob, something you had said before, and I've noticed as far as the pace of traffic on the roads, it seems it's hard to beat Corsica for the speed at which other drivers drive in Corsica. You had said before that you've seen some of the fastest drivers you've ever seen there. And I noticed afterwards, like, yeah, some of these people, you'll see some little lady come around the corner in her Fiat practically up on two wheels and some of these mountain roads, like, my God.
Mm-hmm. That is true. The Corsicans do thunder around.
Yeah.
It does sound pretty exciting. I mean, from the 3 times I've been to Europe, twice with Rob and Gretchen, I can tell this is going to be a different sort of animal. And it's going to give me a lot more of a sense of some of the terrain that's not the typical European sort of terrain that we're used to imagining either on a Rick Steves video or in our minds in the tour books. I'm looking forward to it.
And remarkably varied for the small area that we're going to. It's remarkably varied because the two islands are so completely different from one another in topography, in flora, in fauna. They really and truly are. It's remarkable in retrospect as you're getting off of Corsica and you think about the time that you spent on both islands and the contrasts. It's really remarkable that they're only 10 miles apart.
Yeah.
Because they're ages apart, it seems, in the geology, I guess. They're ages apart in the geology, it seems. And certainly in the culture, they sure are.
I was noticing, Rob, on the itinerary, there's, what's the name? I don't know how you pronounce it. It's a new place. I don't know if you've been there before, but it's the Golagani.
Yeah. Don't ask me to pronounce it properly.
We need an Italian to pronounce that. But I was looking, there's some natural springs there, natural hot springs in that town. I don't know if we're staying there or hopefully they're nearby. They look beautiful. And the natural ones, I kind of just like the ones that the hot water is just pumped into a big swimming pool. It's just a bit of a letdown. Whereas these ones, it look like a natural setting in the rocks and everything.
Yep.
It look really beautiful.
Yep, exactly.
And that'd be a new one. We haven't been to that before, so I'm really looking forward to checking that out. So knowing we had this podcast come up today, I saw a motorcyclist take off from the satellites today, and it made me think of something. I think both of you preach is always putting one foot down when you're stopped at a stop sign light or whatever. I thought I don't think, or at least I haven't heard you explain why. I'm watching this person. Something came to my mind why that you should be doing this, but I'd like to get both of your opinions. So why is that? What's with the 1 foot thing?
Well, I'll field it first. So I had a bad habit of rolling through intersections, rolling up to, what people would consider a stop before they then roll on. But when I was with Carolyn behind me, very often I would make a move that did not necessarily, wasn't very predictable. And so when I started to stop and then put my foot down, look left, look right, look left again, and then go, everything slowed down. And it just made it so that I didn't miss things. And just by taking that moment to stop, put your left foot down, and then look, and go. And anybody that's with you, you're much more predictable. So that's really my thing about that.
Good point. That's a good point that I hadn't thought about. Ken, you bring so much stuff to the table. It's awesome.
Makes our job easy.
Yeah, it's a smorgasbord with Ken Condon.
Yeah, I got a ton of them. Let's see what you got to say about that.
For sure. No, from my perspective, it is very simply that routinely and regularly in the places that we're riding, or that I'm riding and taking tour members, we are stopping on angles that require one to put one and only 1 foot down. At 6'1" or 6'2", whatever I am these days, I keep shrinking as I get older, with a 33-inch inseam, there are many places that I can only put 1 foot down because the road underneath me is too steep. I push it because I think it's important that everybody gets comfortable with the idea of coming to a stop and choosing which foot they're going to put down based on the circumstances that present themselves. If that's something that people are not familiar with, then it's a big problem. But your idea of it indicating to those around you what is happening is also excellent. That's an excellent point.
So Ken, you're a proponent of it because you want people to slow down at intersections, and as a emergency response worker, I can tell you that's where the stuff happens, at intersections. If you want to make time up, do it on the highway or the straights or whatever. Rob, you want people to be ambidextrous?
Yes.
Maybe working the left and right brain in there. Okay, here's my perspective on this. Tell me what you think about this. When I watched the motorcyclists stop, they were stopped at a set of lights, light turns green, they had both feet on. And I noticed that by having both feet on, it seemed to move their body out of proper position on the bike. And as we know, to have good control of a motorcyclist, you need your feet on the pegs. And I was thinking about that. I thought, does that tend to put you out of position on the bike? So now you put your feet on the pegs, you got to kind of shift your butt a little bit, kind of get back into position. And if all you're doing is going straight across the intersection, you got a little bit more time, as long as someone's not turning left in front of you or something. This guy was turning left right away. I thought he's not, his body positioning's wrong for making that turn. And had he just put that one foot down, you can't really kind of shift out of place so much because your weight has to stay on your butt for the most part. So you can't move position. What do you think of that?
Balance is everything. Obviously a motorcycle, when the slower it goes, the more you've got to take control of the balance, and the stability is diminished. So anything that you can do to keep that bike and the combination of you and the motorcycle in balance is really going to be critical, particularly when we're talking about the scenarios that Rob brought up, when the camber of the road or just the surface itself does not allow you to, do this crutch, which I call it, when people come to a stop with their outriggers, both feet out, because they're afraid that they're going to drop the bike. It's the first indicator that they really don't have a sense of balancing a motorcycle. And so that's what's going to end up happening is when they approach their motorcycling that way, when, I'm slowing down, I know the bike might want to fall over, I get nervous, I ride like a rookie. So really good riders will ride very, well up to the point where they are now going below, say, 7 miles an hour, and then they tense up and everything goes bad. So that's one example. So when they start off again, it all, that first 7, 8 miles, 10 miles an hour, they still are tense, and their handlebars are everything's just not working well. It's not the way a motorcycle likes to be treated. So, and what Rob said about being able to put one foot down, this is something that I teach my street students all the time. And at first I have to explain to them that this may sound like a trivial thing, but I want you to come to a stop with your right foot on that rear brake and the left foot down. And obviously in the cases where you have to then put your right foot down, that's sort of, this plays into it, but it's always the idea that you can choose which foot to put down, and that you're not relying on those both feet to give you the confidence that you're not going to fall over. That's something that you have to train yourself to do. And the other thing is that bailing out of that rear brake when you're coming to a stop, that's your control brake. And so when you bail out on that, and let's say you're on a slope, and now you're relying 100% on your front brake, and both feet are on the ground, and then you have to take off. Now that's certainly it's doable, where you ease off the front brake while you get on the throttle and ease out the clutch. That's an awful lot to do for some people. Whereas if you have the balance of keeping that right foot on the rear brake, and now you ease off the rear brake, and your right hand only has one thing to do, and that is control the throttle.
Or you take your new BMW that has hill start, and you simply grab the front brake and you just ride it away, and it just works wonderfully. And it actually really does.
Yeah, it does work really well.
It's a horrible crutch, but it does work.
Yeah, I got to say that even sometimes I forget. I have to make sure that I understand what motorcycle my students are on, because I was talking about quick upshifting, and the guy had a brand new BMW 1200 GS. And I'm like, wait a second, you've got shift assist, don't you? He said, yeah. Well, wouldn't you say something? like 3 minutes of talking about the importance of shifting quickly, and forget about it. But yeah, oh boy, gosh, if you have some technology that's going to help you with this stuff, by all means use it. But you understand that the balance thing doesn't go away. Technology hasn't yet erased that need for you to feel comfortable balancing a big motorcycle. The challenge is half the fun,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. So, have you watched the MotoGP race, Ken?
I sure did.
Yep.
Some people just need to just count their blessings. That was just some crazy stuff. Everybody was so excited about it that on social media, which I'm on a lot for business purposes, for promoting track days in school. And sure enough, and even if they didn't say anything, it just became really obvious that something really scary happened to certain people. And, I had to just shut it off. And eventually I was going to go to a vintage motorcycle shop to watch the race that night. And I couldn't. I had to watch the race, I could have gone later, but I was like, I just have to see what's going on. Otherwise, it's going to get spoiled. So it was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah. And everyone's talking about Rossi. It did come really close to him, but Vinales, same thing. Less so, just.
But Vinales didn't necessarily see it. Rossi saw it.
Yeah.
Did you see the photo of Vinales though, with his hands
like this? Yeah.
Something. Wow. And that's crazy. That's what caused him to run wide. I was wondering about that. And you let go of the handlebars, it tends to cause your motorcycle to run wide.
He lost concentration.
Yeah.
Well, that is just another visual on how much luck plays into our lives.
Yeah.
It really is. And we pretend it is different, but here we are in the middle of a COVID world. And luck has got a lot to do with it. Yeah. So all of you folk that are sitting out there and you're making plans to do this or do that somewhere in the future when you retire and 10 years down the road, think about luck and think about the fact that at some point maybe it runs out. So do what you want to do before then. Do it now. Don't wait.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't wait, because maybe in 5 years the luck isn't good. It's bad, and bang, should have done that 5 years ago.
Well, even this COVID we're talking about right now, for some people, I mentioned before in a previous podcast that a friend of mine was going to go to the Isle of Man this year. He talked about it for years and years. This was going to be the year. He had booked it. Well, of course, now it's not happening. So, and hopefully they're having it and he's able to go next year if he chooses. But just sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. The next year your daughter's getting married the same weekend. Although if it's a smart enough family member, they wouldn't get married on a race weekend. But if they've been trained properly, come on. But something like that happens. You can't go the next year, and then sometimes things just don't happen, right?
Yeah, no, there's windows. You're going to look back and you're going to see there are certain windows that were there that they will close on you. So you do have to act on these things. Mm-hmm. I mean, your health, you just don't know. I mean, just any little thing will come upon you, and you'll just start to look back and say, gee, we really did miss out on things that we really did have on this bucket list, and we could have done it, and we hesitated.
Yep. Well, it's fascinating that it takes me quite a while to do certain things and get certain things going mentally to say, yep, let's go do this. But with each of those, it certainly hasn't affected me in a negative way down the road at all, the same way that I was worried about before I made the decision. Mm-hmm. If I do this financially, it's going to beat me up because we don't have that much money to do that much remodeling and blah, 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 blah. And then after the fact, well, yeah, we paid for it. It took care of itself. It really wasn't that big of a deal, et cetera, et cetera. There are many, many things like that. And I don't regret the stuff that I've done that was a stretch when I did it at all. So, yep, folks, move out there and do it. Go play in Sardinia and Corsica with that world famous man of a million different ideas, Ken Condon.
Yeah, I plan on helping those who are with me to become better riders. But not only that, when you leave, the idea is that you're going to be able to carry what you learn from the trip. Now, this is a fun trip. It's not school, so don't think of it as school. It's really relaxed, really laid back. You can take as much of the instruction I'm willing to offer, or as little as you want. It's really up to you. And I'm going to be doing it, a little different than I did last year. I'll be doing seminars, and I'll be riding with you, with folks, and I'll kind of at breaks give you tips and sort of draw out diagrams and that kind of thing. So it'll be pretty relaxed and chill, and we'll ride together. We'll just go for a ride together. That's sort of how I'm seeing it.
This sort of reminds me of I went for a few golf lessons here and there to try and be less terrible. And when I was hitting the ball with with the instructor, of course, he gets you in the proper body position and everything else. And all of a sudden I'm hitting the ball great. Every shot, you can just feel it's hitting the club, perfect spot. Next day, go out to the driving range and you're back to terrible self again. And you think, why? That's why I need this guy to walk with me as I go off 18 holes or whatever, and then point out, okay, what the hell did I just do? Why did the ball just do that? And that's kind of what you're offering, Ken. It's like you're going out riding for the day, and geez, why did I totally mess up that corner? Oh, I got Ken behind me. Ken, what the hell did I just do?
Yeah. And it's I've been doing this a long time, and it's pretty straightforward as far as the tips that I can give. And then the next time after we're done with our gelato, you get back on your bike and you go and you practice it and you see how it goes. You have any questions about it? I'm there. So, there's going to be quite a few people on the tour typically. And so I only have one person, that would be me on my crew. And so I have to be sort of spread out over everybody. So I try to really give as much time as I can to anybody, to the whole group, whoever wants it. And, but again, I'll make sure that at least the group gets what I think they need to make their tour better. I mean, it's going to be more fun when you feel more in control, and that you are able to sightsee a little bit more, have a little bit more bandwidth to absorb your the environment, and not have to be worried so much about the controlling of the motorcycle or managing things that you're not real comfortable with, whether it be slow speed maneuvers, coming to stops like we talked about, or just cornering in various scenarios, various different types of corners that we'll encounter.
Maybe some good tips on pig evasion.
Remember,
and goat and sheep
and goat. It's more the goat evasion, I think.
And remember, when it comes to animals, if it fits in a skillet, kill it. So
it's in a skillet, kill it.
Yeah, no braking, no turning, just hit it.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah. No. Speaking as the guy who have to wash the bike afterwards, but no, maybe with your boot or something. I don't know.
Right.
Excellent. Good. Well, I'll tell you what, Ken, I'm really looking forward to this particular trip. It's going to be good to have you and Mike along, and it's just a great tour. And Gretchen and I both really enjoy getting back to the islands as a normal part of our schedule and our itinerary, but it'll be great to have you and Caroline along, and it's a good one. You've done well with that choice, my friend.
Yeah, I'm really glad you guys sort of talked it up when we were on the Italy tour. I asked you about it, and it sounded just amazing. So I'm all in.
Excellent. Good. So, Mike.
Yeah.
Did you come up with lightning questions today?
I do have a few. It's hard because we talk all the time. So, but I have a few. You both can try them and see what you figure. Okay, Ken, chocolate or strawberry?
Chocolate.
Robbie?
Fresh strawberries, chocolate ice cream.
Rob, mussels or pasta?
Mussels.
Ken?
I got to say pasta.
Ken, dessert cart or cheese cart?
Dessert cart. I got a sweet tooth. However, cheesecake might come into play.
Rob?
Cheese. And in Corsica, cheese.
Yeah, the cheese cart. Love the cheese cart. Ken, ferry food or street meat?
Say what?
Ferry food or street meat? Like a food truck.
Whatever's in the skillet.
Yeah, you beat me to it.
Hey, are you familiar with the Corsican worm cheese? It's where they have the cheese. There's actually live worms in there. So Corsican worm cheese, Ken, would you eat it? Yes or no?
No.
Rob?
When it's still moving, no.
When it's crawling off the plate, literally. It's like, okay.
Cool.
That's all I got.
And then when this is all over, we'll be able to say, Ken, Corsica or Sardinia?
I will then not be able to answer that question because it's a trick question.
Yeah, it's it really is. When it comes to the curves and the riding and the roads, they're not comparable. They're truly not comparable. You'll love it, and the scenery is just remarkable. So that's the story. Ken, thanks for coming out and talking to us.
Pleasure. It's fun, guys. Thanks for having me.
Roger that. Catch you later.
All righty.
We can't hear you, Rob. Did you mute yourself?
I wish he'd mute himself more often, but not now, though, Rob. We kind of need you right here.
Yeah.
Right here, right here. Okay, yep. Okay.
He's always so difficult, you know. It's just